Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 7 of Animation U. I'm your host, Ryan, and today's guest is a food lover, hiking enthusiast, and lifting fella, Joseph Buenning.
Hey Ryan, thanks for having me.
Hell yeah, glad you're on. So, before we get started, talking about art school, we do want to get to know Joseph a little bit, as you know. So, Joseph, when did you decide to become an artist?
I think it was around like the end of high school for me, where I was like, I think I might want to make a career out of this. I think it was like junior, maybe senior year of high school.
Oh, okay. So, you know, from what I've heard mostly is people were talking about oh, since I was a kid. But, I'm also kind of in the same boat. I remember back in 2013, 2014, something like that. That's when I was also in high school at the time. And I was thinking, maybe I'll give art a shot. But during that time, were you consuming any particular media that kind of inspired you to pursue this?
Yeah. It was like the summer before, I think junior year, where I was watching like Toy Story 3 and Monsters University. There's like this behind the scenes stuff on the DVD, and I thought it was really cool to hear an artist like Dice Tatsumi talk about like his journey of becoming an artist, and that was something that really inspired me back in the day.
So, before, you didn't have any, experience drawing or, anything like that?
I had some experience. I think I probably did as much art as any other kid, but I don't think I really went uh, super hard with it. Like I feel like other artists did when they were younger.
Oh, so you didn't I guess the word would be taking it seriously per se, just trying to improve yourself at art.
Yeah, like I didn't take it like super seriously. I wasn't really like disciplined when I was a kid with art or anything.
I mean, yeah, it's such a crazy thing to kind of a lot of people say art's for fun, it's a fun thing to do. But when you kind of switch into that mindset of trying to actively improve yourself, then you realize low key this shit is hard, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is really hard. Yeah, it really is.
We're gonna take a little flashback back to high school, when you were applying to art schools.
Yeah.
Were there other art schools besides BYU that you had applied to?
I actually didn't apply to any art schools, and actually BYU isn't really an art school. It's just like a normal university, I guess. But there are like some art programs in the university. But yeah, I just applied to BYU and then University of Utah, and then I ultimately just chose BYU for like personal reasons and like financial reasons.
Okay. Also, a quick question. So, did you grow up in the Utah area?
Actually, I grew up in Asia, so um like elementary school, I was like in China, and then I moved to the States for like middle school and high school. But during that time, I was in like southern Utah.
Wait, so during what time were you in, after middle school, you said?
Middle school and onward, I was in southern Utah.
Oh, okay. So, you went to BYU straight out of high school, basically.
Basically, yeah, I did.
Okay. So, there were these two universities. You said the first one was University of Utah and BYU.
Correct. Yeah, I only applied to two schools. I was pretty dumb. I should have applied to like other schools as well,
Yeah,
but I didn't really know much about animation or I didn't know Cal Arts existed or Sheridan or Ringling. Didn't even know those places existed.
yeah. So I know you mentioned that you just kind of applied to BYU, and so I'm assuming you applied to these, like you mentioned, it was financial reasons, it was proximity reasons, kind of, and other personal reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
So did you do any research, or did you even go into BYU knowing you're going to be an animation major?
Yeah, I knew BYU had an animation program, but just because like my siblings had gone to BYU, they were aware of like what's available there, and so yeah, going into BYU, I at least I knew that they have like an animation program and an illustration program, but even when I got there, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do the animation program or illustration. I just knew I wanted to do art for animation is what I was thinking.
We're gonna go back into, because as of now you are a senior. I think you are a senior, right?
Yeah, I'm a senior right now. I just have a few generals to wrap up.
Hell yeah, congratulations. So
Oh, thanks, man.
no problem. But so like if we could go back in time a little bit and like if you could just recount your experiences at BYU, like what did you find what did you find most appealing about your time there?
I can't speak for the whole university, but as far as my program goes, like the animation program, I think there's a lot of great people in the program. The faculty are great. It's a really small program, but I think the faculty do a lot with what they have. So I think that's a good and yeah, generally I'd say the animation program is like a nice it's a nice environment to be in for like creative people. So yeah.
That's cool. I mean, like I've always heard from like a in a previous interview I did with Anna. She went to USC. She also had kind of like a small animation pro. There was a very small animation program there. Maybe like I don't remember the exact number, but maybe like 16 people total for her year. And she was telling me
Yeah.
that they were very close because of it. Like they'd spend like nights working in the lab with each other. Would you say like
Yeah.
it was also a similar experience for you?
Yeah, yeah, the program's like around the same size. I'd say maybe slightly bigger because I think it varies year to year, but I think my year had like 20 people or something.
Okay,
Uh,
about the same then, right?
yeah. Yeah, just about. But yeah, there'd totally be some like late nights in the lab if needed, and but yeah, I think yeah, especially like my freshman year, I totally went hard in the labs, and that's something I don't really do anymore. I feel like I prioritize balance a bit more. I don't, at least for me, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but for me, I feel like for my well-being, I think it's better to put things in or do things in like moderation.
Yeah, no, most dude, man, like there were this is also like another callback to another previous episode for Christina at LMU. She said like she has the same belief too because of like some of the crazy stuff people were doing in the lab or like the things that people were doing with their bodies, right? Like they weren't taking care of it properly. Like they were staying up for 3 days in a row. And a wild thing that happened at the lab was that some guy had a leg infection and he didn't tell anybody because he was too focused on like working on a project. So it was like you need like moderation is definitely something that everyone should do. Like you shouldn't be giving up like your bodily health to finish a project, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I'm totally guilty of. I mean, I didn't have like a leg infection or anything, but I I'm totally been guilty of like pulling late nights in the lab or like maybe taking on too much work than I should have, or like not eating enough or not sleeping enough, and those are really important things, or having like a good social life, friends and family are super important. Having like hobbies and interests outside of work or school and taking care of your health is so important.
Yeah, it's really scary too that it's kind of like, like it's what's expected kind of almost like currently because people's mindset are like, dude, I have to make this amazing. Like I have to do like this. I have to be the best ever to do it. So I need to put in the hours. But then like like people are like you get back problems, wrist problems, like eye problems especially is a really bad one too.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
burnout. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and
Yep.
not to even mention like probably the biggest one, which is like the mental problems that come along with like pushing yourself to do these things.
Yep. Yep. I could totally see that, and yeah, at least for me, like I've experienced some burnout in the past, and it's really hard to overcome.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. But another thing that you had mentioned was the having stuff to do outside of school, or like outside of art.
Yeah.
To
Yep.
to anybody listening, like you should get a hobby. Do something that isn't always art related. Because again, like I've said this before, but the best art comes from like life experiences and like just doing stuff and experiencing life in general. You know what I mean? Like making friends and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just hope people are able to be happy. I mean, I know some people they really are genuinely happy doing art all day, and like I think if that works for them, that's great. But at least for me, I don't know if that works for me in my lifestyle.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Like, whatever works for you. So moving on, were you a part of any programs or extracurriculars at BYU? Like, was there an animation club over there or something?
There weren't any animation clubs, but there were like different projects that would be in development with like the different senior classes. And pretty early on, like even my freshman year, I would be involved with those. And so, in a way, those were kind of the extracurriculars that I was involved with, just so like I could work on those and get experience and get to know the people in those classes.
Oh, okay.
But nowadays, I'm more interested in being outside, going on hikes, spending time with friends outside, and going to the gym or something.
These like you said, they you worked on senior films.
Yeah, there are senior films and games actually. I just wanted to be involved in everything.
Oh, okay. So for so these senior films, were they required for like graduation? So like were they like thesis films?
Yes, yeah, these were like thesis projects. They weren't required. They're not required for like the underclassmen, but for seniors, yeah, they are required.
Okay, so like they need to make one to graduate. So
Mhm.
um for the so you've actually worked on a couple of these films and I'd love to touch on them. The first one being I actually don't know the chronicle order, but the first one you worked on was Grendel, right?
Yep. Yeah, I worked on Grendel my freshman year.
Yeah, so if you could tell me about your involvement in that.
Yeah, I was actually involved in the senior game project first, just because when I had first come to BYU, I just got to know some people in the labs that were working on it, and then they got me on board, and so I was really involved with that. But I was really more interested in film development, and so Grendel was a great opportunity for me as a freshman to see if that's something I really liked and wanted to do. So yeah, yeah. So I just tried to do the best I could to help them out back in the day when I was really inexperienced. Just try my best.
Yeah, but would you say so overall you'd say like that experience was kind of a very positive one?
Yeah, it was a great experience. I feel like I only have good things to say about that group that made that project. Yeah, everybody was really kind and supportive, and patient because I had like I didn't really have that much experience working on projects like that.
Hell yeah, you want to give a quick shout out to anyone in particular?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. I'd hate to miss anybody, have anybody feel left out, but I guess I'll say like Kaylee, she was like the director and she did a great job. And then there was like Austin, who was the producer. He was really kind and supportive, and there was Mickey and Eric and Thad. Yeah, there were just a bunch of people in that group that were really talented, kind, supportive, um, and patient.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I'm glad that. Plus, that was like kind of your first experience within the university, right? Basically, besides the game one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was well, I was yeah heavily involved in the game project, and then tried to dive in simultaneously into the film project, which wasn't in hindsight like that was kind of a lot.
Oh, like you're taking two
Yeah,
things on at once. Yeah.
yeah, and at the same time, I was like trying to do the requirements to like apply to my program because I was still a pre-major at the time.
Okay. So, like for Grendel, was there like did you have a specific title or like a role that you were doing?
I just did visual development or concept art. So, like I did uh, props and a like a moment painting.
So, like like typical Viz Dev stuff, then, right?
Yeah, yeah, and then like do render paintings of characters as well.
Oh, sweet. So, did you have a similar role on Death and Delilah, which is like the other film that you worked on?
Yeah, yeah, really similar thing for Death and Delilah. Though I was doing like color keys, effects design, and like matte painting as well.
He kind of like moved up and did like more stuff. So, like, what was the time gap between Grendel and Death and Delilah? It was like what, a year, maybe?
Uh, it's like a year and a half to 2 years. Grendel was actually a longer project. I was only involved like with the very early part of it, and I think it took him like 2 years to make that film, and I was gone for most of that, and then also part of Death and Delilah as well.
Okay. Well, I mean,
But
both of those
oh,
films are
sorry, go
really.
ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. But both of those films are really cool. To anybody listening, go check them out. Joe and his team and everyone else worked very hard on it.
Oh, they did a great job. Yeah, sorry, just to clarify a little bit more. Typically, the senior projects at BYU, it's recommended that they're done in about a year, but sometimes the projects are pretty big, so it takes longer. And like Grendel was one of those cases where it took like about 2 years or so for the team to get that done.
I mean, yeah, dude. Like I was watching it, and like as a senior thesis film, like the stuff that's being made there is kind of crazy. Like I really did love Death and Die. Like all of the just like basically like everything about it. I thought it was a really great film. I was like, man, like these are student thesis films being made. Like these look like they could be like like a Disney short, like something that pops up before the actual movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's some really talented people in the program. It fluctuates year to year. Some classes have a bit more firepower than others, but generally they're pretty good.
Hell yeah. Now we're gonna move on a little bit. Did you take any third party supplementation classes during your time at BYU? Kind of like schoolism or brainstorm?
I did, yeah. Um, I went through some schoolism classes, though. I didn't really do it in a traditional way where like you actually do the assignments from schoolism. I was just really busy with like school and these two projects, like the senior thesis projects, and trying to get into my program at the same time. And so what I would do was I would watch the schoolism classes, and instead of doing the assignments they gave, I would pretend that I would just try to apply what I was learning to the assignments on the projects I was working on because of my like limited time that I had.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of like whatever like the lecture was about that day, you try to apply it to your work that you needed for school.
Yeah, yeah. So like I would, for example, if I would watch some things about painting, and then if I had a painting assignment, I would just try to apply what I was learning to the painting assignment for the student productions. Or for like when I was applying to my major, you have to turn in a sketchbook. And so I remember um I would watch videos from Daniel Arriaga's character design course on Schoolism, and I'd just do that in my sketchbook to turn in because like I had to work on a sketchbook, so I might as well do those assignments in my sketchbook.
Okay, I mean, honestly, that makes a lot of sense. I've never taken schoolism before, but I'm going to assume like if you don't turn in an assignment, they're not gonna like cut you out or anything.
Oh no, so it just depends on what kind of subscription you have. So like there's a subscription where like you can just watch all the lectures in your own time and do the assignments on your own time, and you don't get feedback. Though if you pay more, you could get like feedback and stuff from the instructors.
Like you weren't getting in trouble for not turning in your assignments.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah, it's like they come to your dorm and they ask you about it.
Oh
Should
yeah,
I break
nobody
it?
was checking in on me. I was just trying to apply what I was learning from the videos and just trying to get things done on the student projects.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Remember, guys, time management very important.
Oh man, I mean, I don't know if I'd recommend doing things how I did them. It's just how it was, just how I try to make things work.
But one thing that I do want to touch on is the kind of the degree program at BYU really quickly because you mentioned you needed a
Okay.
sketchbook to turn in.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, does BYU offer a BFA program or is it just a regular BA?
It is a BFA program, and you have to apply to get in. Usually, it may have changed recently, but um, when I applied, you're just a pre-major, and then you have to apply to get in before you're accepted into the BFA program. But I think nowadays it's you're a pre-major, and so you have to even apply to be a pre-major. and then you have to apply
What?
to be in the BFA. Yeah, it can be pretty intense from what I've heard, but I think they do it because they don't want to like have students like waste a whole year of their life if they are absolutely not able to do animation for whatever reason.
So like it may have changed now, but before
Yeah.
you would actually get into the BFA, you would have to apply as a or you would be a pre-major and then apply into it.
Yep. Yeah, you take your first year to do the required classes and develop your application for the program.
But what if you did apply and then you get rejected? What would happen?
It may be different now, but from what I understand, you have two chances to get into the program. And then that it's it after that. Though I'm pretty sure there have been cases where people will get like a call back or they get like some notes saying like, hey, like you're really close. Apply again in just a couple months and we'll see if you're up to par then. But um yeah, and I've heard of that happening a couple times. And for some people, it works out really great for them. And yeah, there have been some really talented people that didn't get in their first time, and they're now doing really great things. Yeah.
Besides the sketchbook, were there any other materials that you had to submit into to get into the BFA?
Yep. Yeah, there were you had to turn in figure drawings and then at least two 3D images. So one of them, typically people will turn in like a Lego figurine that's done in 3D, and then what's something that's called like the bug assignment, where you 3D model a bug that you designed, whether it's like organic or like a hard surface bug or something like that. And then some, I think there was at least like one or two 2D animations, and then the rest is like miscellaneous stuff that you want to show off, like whether it's artwork or more 3D stuff or technical work. For mine, I did uh, mostly concept art or visual development because that's what I wanted to show and that's what I want to do.
For the BFA, were there like certain specialties like animation specified or illustration specified and like maybe I don't know, like 3D animation?
There are, but they aren't like formal. I'd say the program keeps things pretty general, especially early on. Like, for example, with me, like, even though I knew I wanted to do visual development, I still had to learn like 3D modeling and texturing, shading, and lighting, and some compositing, and even some like 3D animation and rigging too. But I guess like it's ultimately up to you to like make sure you're doing what you need for your specialty. So a lot of the stuff for visual development I would like do outside of school.
Okay, so what I mean, they just kind of gave you like a general know how everything works within the industry basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah, they have you learn everything in the program.
Okay, I feel like that's a good thing. So you kind of have an understanding of how the pipeline works as you go on further.
Yeah, it's really hard. And not gonna lie, I've been guilty of like, oh man, like I wish I didn't have to do this, but I think it definitely has its benefits. Like whether it's like being able to utilize those skills like practically when you're like doing visual development, like or even just like having empathy for the people you're working with, and just understanding that like the things other people are doing are also very hard, and you got to be patient or know what problems they're facing and how to help them out.
Yeah, that's such a like you said, like having an empathy for like people further down the pipeline, like that's also an important thing to have because it'll, like when you're designing something, it'll help you like design it more efficiently, I guess. He's like, oh, like these guys are gonna have a huge problem down the line getting this thing to move if I design it like this.
Yeah, yeah, or like, oh man, like I hope this drawing or painting makes sense for the 3D modelers or riggers or yeah, things like that.
Yeah. So again, overall, very beneficial to pity the guys down the pipeline. But
Mhm.
moving on to like kind of the more social aspects of BYU, did you feel included at your school or like did you kind of feel like you stood out?
Um, I I'm honestly like I'm really introverted, so I mostly just like kept to myself and mostly just talked to people within my program or the projects I was working on. And I can't really speak for other people's experiences at the university and other majors, but I'd say generally with the animation program at BYU, people are generally pretty nice and helpful and kind to each other.
Okay, that's good to hear. More, like I know at like other schools, like typically this only happens in the freshman year where people are like kind of competitive with each other. But
Oh,
which
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's totally a thing with pre-majors. That totally happens.
Oh, really? So like when you were a pre-major at
Yeah.
BYU, you felt it was competitive?
Oh, yeah. I mean, generally, again, I'd say people are nice, but I remember when I was a pre-major, there were some people where I think they would give in to their insecurities in not good ways. Because like, I'm sure like a lot of pre-majors, myself included, were really nervous about like getting into the program and stuff. But I remember like specifically, like there would be people where without permission or consent, they would just, like, look through other people's sketchbooks to, like, gauge the competition, and, like, that's, like, a really personal thing to do, like, or just to, like, look through people's sketchbooks, at least for me, like, that's so it's a private little thing.
Dude, yeah, wait, that that's kind of crazy because like, like having a personal sketchbook, it's basically like a journal, you know what I mean? And with that
Yeah, yeah.
that's so gross. Like just like going through it without like a person's permission is like you're going, you know, probably going through like what that person was feeling at like certain points in life. And wow, that's crazy. Like people,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
one thing one of my friends told me about was like, I swear to God, I share this story on every episode, but my friend was in a class, right? He's just minding his own business, and some guy walks up to him and is all like, I'd be your friend, but to me you're competition. I was like, dude, you're such a dork. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty gross sometimes when people are like that, yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, but would you say like the pre-major was kind of it was bigger than the actual major, right?
Um, let's see, I can't remember the, like, actual stats for it, but I think on average, there'd be like 100 or so applicants to the program each year. And then in total with the program, I think there's like, oh, like maybe 70 or 75 people in the major. So I guess like there are more pre-majors than people in the major.
It
I
was.
could be wrong. I'm not good at math. I'm not gonna claim to be a mathematician or anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is. I'm still shocked about that sketchbook story you told earlier. But was there any other instances that you felt like your time in the pre major was kind of like uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, yeah, it'd just be like instances like that, or like people like walking around during figure drawing to like gauge the competition. Um, but I mean, generally, I'd say people were really nice and supportive, and like I still have friends from that time, and they're really great people that I got to spend time with when I was a pre-major.
That's sweet. So the second part of that question, it kind of leads into that. Whereas I ask, did it also feel like supportive? I mean, you've mentioned it before, like during your time on the thesis film or the senior thesis films, that a lot of people were very supportive of you and like kind of uplifting you at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say generally people are really supportive. I mean, every now and then things can be competitive. Um, most of the time in a healthy way. Um, yeah, yeah. And, like, I'm sure it happens everywhere, no matter where you're at. There's bound to be, um, competition, whether it's, like, other people doing things or even myself, where, like, maybe, like, I might say something or do something I probably shouldn't or something like that. But generally, I'd say people are really supportive.
And that's good to hear. I mean, I feel like it's like I said before, like it's especially common in like freshman year to be like, having that attitude of, oh, I'm better than everybody, like, oh, I'm better than you, most definitely. But like you said,
Yeah,
it probably
yeah.
stems from like nervousness or like uncertainty or like even just like
Yep.
being like around other artists. Because a lot of the people who go to animation school are kind of like big, like big fish in a small pond type of deal. Like they're probably the only person who like drew at their high school.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right. I think when people are competitive or and things like that, I think yeah, I think it's all about, like, maybe people are just nervous or really insecure, and I'm totally guilty of that. I still to this day, like I can be totally insecure about my art and my portfolio and things. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just like, the struggle of an artist.
yeah. But I mean, it could be worse. There are totally harder things in life for sure.
Yeah, 100%. But moving on to like my last question about the social scene within BYU, did you feel
Yeah,
that making friends was easy? Was it hard? And I probably know the answer to this, but like it wasn't a commuter school, was it?
it wasn't. Did you say community or commuter
A
school?
commuter.
Uh, Sorry. Do you mind just like give me a refresher? What is a commuter school?
Oh, a commuter school is like people they what they do is they go to class and then they leave and go home. So like
Oh,
a lot of
okay.
public schools are kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna drive to class and go home and hang out with my friends instead of I'm gonna live on campus, go to class, and hang out with my friends that I made on campus.
I'm sure it's like a mix of things where like it could be a commuter school. I'm sure some people are in those circumstances, but like as far as like how easy it is to like make friends and stuff. Again, I can't speak for everybody. Because most of the time, like I just spend time with people in my program, and generally people in my program are nice and friendly. Though, however, I'm aware that like I'm aware that there are totally um, minorities and groups that may have a hard time making friends, and like I'm that is an issue, like whether like they're POCs or like people like the LGBTQ community, like especially in Utah, like that can be a really hard thing. And so,
Oh yeah, of course.
like even though like I've had generally like the animation program can be pretty diverse with like POCs or people that are LGBTQ, but on a university level, I don't know if I could confidently say that.
So BYU is a majority white school.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I know like I've been lucky enough to be like kind of born within an area where like, people look like me, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
like being able to find friends that way and like being introduced to other cultures like that, like very organically, very naturally. And I know that a large part of school or like college in general is kind of meeting those kind of people. And I'm glad you got to meet certain people, like you said, like within your program. I'm glad you got to like kind of introduce yourself or like expose yourself to like the different cultures within there. But I do believe like the college experience is like half of like, I mean, going to college, like half of it is like like getting your degree, but the other half is just like enriching yourself as a person.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to get to know other people, get to know where other people are coming from and the different circumstances people are in. Yeah, yeah, it's a great time to try and build empathy or just like have good experiences or bad experiences.
Yeah, really build up that person, that uh
Yeah.
the best you, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that totally continues onward after school.
Hmm. So moving on, you're currently working at a certain entertainment company. Could you tell the people where you're working at right now?
Yeah, so this summer I've been interning with Walt Disney Animation Studios as a visual development artist. And then do you want me to go through like some of my work history or
Yeah.
just
Yeah, sure.
things like recent?
Whatever you can.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Before this, I used to do some freelance. Like my first project was on a Warner Brothers project for a game they were doing, right? And and then last summer I interned with Disney Television Animation. And then after that, I did freelance with them as a background painter on one of their shows. And yeah, and so far I've had a really positive experience with the Walt Disney Company. I feel
Shout
like,
out to Disney.
yeah, yeah, there's really a lot of great people at the Walt Disney Company, both at Disney TV and Disney Feature. I've really felt like it's been amazing to see like just how talented people are, and then also just how good people are, like just how kind and generous and supportive and patient people are.
Yeah, I'm glad you had like a great experience over there. But I want to kind of ask about how your university helped you translate into that internship. So, did you feel that your school appropriately prepared you to secure that internship, or like any of them?
Um, I think I think my program, like the animation program, does a good job with preparing students for industry because like they they give us opportunities to do hard things, even if it's like not related to your specialty. But like I think um yeah, I think my program does it gives you opportunities to do hard things and then opportunities to work with other people and take feedback, which is really important. Yeah.
That's good.
But ultimately, well, yeah, I think it's up to the individuals like to really make those make sure that they're ready for those opportunities if possible.
Oh yeah, that's another thing where like at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what school you go to. What matters is kind of the effort and the work that you put in. Again, like to get these sort of things or like to get these sort of opportunities, it does kind of lie within yourself to kind of dedicate a little bit of your time to try and improve yourself.
Yeah, and I think some of it I think too is also just like luck or just people are very kind. Like I I'm just blown away by how kind people are at Disney. Like I had no expectation that any of these opportunities would come up. So I think part of it is like people are just really kind.
And also like another thing I want to touch on is luck. That's also like that's also like a big deciding factor in a lot of these things. Sometimes you just got to get lucky. It's just how it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really do be like that sometimes.
It do feel like that sometimes, yeah. But like after you had applied, I want to know what was the interview process like.
I actually did not have an interview this year. I just got an email saying like, "Hey, could you do a Zoom call?" It was with Matt Roberts. He's the like artistic recruiter for Disney Future, and yeah, he just emailed me saying like, "Hey, just want to make sure you know like you're one of our top candidates, and we'd like to get in touch." And um, he called me on Zoom one day and just said, "Hey, I'm just gonna get straight to the point. Like, we love to offer you this internship." And so that happened, and he was really kind. And then, in my previous internship with Disney TV, I did have an interview process. I just had one interview with Kyle over there. Really incredible guy. Yeah, he just like, if I remember right, we just like looked over my portfolio and he just wanted to get to know me more. And I think that's generally how interviews are, is like if you get an interview, I think at that point it means like they like your stuff and they just want to know like who you are as a person. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in another interview, other people could chime in on their experiences. But at least that's my understanding of how interviews are.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's amazing, and again, it's just like a testament to like your current like skill level at where you're at, and again, like that's very awesome, dude. Like, I'm very glad for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Also, check out Joe's stuff. I'll put a link somewhere, but you should check it out. It's really sick. Anyway, so besides like Disney or like what year did you apply to your first internship?
Oh man, I applied to internships my freshman year, even like before I had gotten into my major. And I remember actually I applied to Disney Feature my freshman year and I obviously I didn't get it. But I was still like I wanted to be ambitious and I just wanted to put myself out there early on.
Oh hell yeah! I mean, also that's another thing. Like, I don't think this topic has come up within the show yet, but applying to internships, you should like like while you're in college, you should do it like every year. Like maybe you're not like at that skill level yet, but you should try to like just like keep shooting your shot. You never know. But besides, I also wanted to ask, did you apply to any other internships besides Disney?
Oh yeah, throughout my schooling, I've totally applied to different internship opportunities, whenever they'd come up, and yeah, I'm just really grateful that I've been able to participate in them. But yeah, yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I've gotten a lot of rejections as well. Um, yeah, yeah, and and that's normal. I've heard from other I've heard from other artists that in the past that they've rejected so many times before they were able to get any opportunities.
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously rejection is a big part of this industry. Like nobody's never not gotten rejected at this point, right?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there that never get rejected and are really talented. I'm sure it happens.
True, true, actually. But besides like the select few, like rejection is something that you should anticipate and something that you should be prepared for.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, yeah, I remember there were totally times when I would be rejected by a studio and I was like, "Oh man, like kind of sad." But then I get over it and I just try and get better.
It's like, okay, I'll be sad for 30 minutes, but then I got to get back into it.
Yeah, yeah, and I know it can be harder for for some people than others, and but yeah, I would just encourage people to apply to opportunities when they come up, even if you don't feel like you're ready, because like you never know, maybe you are ready. But I think it's a great practice just to be developing your portfolio, making your website, or like your demo reel if you're on the technical side of things. But yeah, totally recommend it.
Hell yeah. So, like, to anybody listening, is there like anything that you'd recommend or like give advice to when applying to these internships?
Um, I guess like number one, apply. I didn't apply to the Disney TV internship. They reached out for that one to see if I was interested. So there are some rare cases. Maybe they will reach out to you, but I'd still absolutely recommend that you apply and put yourself out there. And then I just make sure to include your best work and if possible, have a mentor to help you out and um yeah. Yeah, just try your best because that's really all we can do.
Hell yeah. I like that first tip is like step one, just apply. That
Yeah,
was fun.
I mean, it's pretty shocking, but, like, there's a lot of people that don't apply to things. Like, even in my major, I remember, like, there's a lot of people that just don't apply to things when it's like, there are all these great opportunities out there, and I think it's like, why not apply?
Yeah, actually, like I know, like I've also had like the same experience with like people at my school would be like, oh, like like they graduate but they've never applied to anything, which again I find shocking as well. But I think that kind of stems from again like the nervousness of like like being because like more often than not, a lot of artists I think are kind of like self conscious about their art, when in fact
Yeah.
like they could be creating like the greatest thing ever, but they like everyone's their worst critic, right? So obviously they would be nervous about applying to anything, fearing rejection and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't wanna put anybody down that isn't applying to things or feel like they aren't ready, because, like, everybody's circumstances are different, but I just wanna make sure that, like, I totally support and encourage whoever's listening to apply to opportunities when they come up and just try your best because that's really all you can do.
Yeah, that's a you know that is a really good sentiment. Just try your best. Whatever you're armed with, just go out there and apply. You never know. You never know. So moving on to like kind of my final question is if you had any final thoughts, or lastly, would you recommend BYU to anybody who's trying to pursue animation and is thinking of a school to go to?
Yeah. So BYU is a really unique university, and so I would say for some people I might recommend it. For some people I might not. For like just for example, it's a religious school. And for some people, that can be really hard for them. Like if you don't fit into that mold or if you have a hard time following certain policies at the university, which is totally understandable. And I don't think less of anybody that wouldn't or couldn't go to BYU. But for people that are able to or are interested in being at BYU, like I'd recommend it. So it's a relatively affordable school to attend. Like tuition's really cheap in comparison to other schools. And for animation, I would recommend it. It's a good program. There's great people there. The faculty do a great job, and they do a lot with what they have, even though it's a small program. And um, yeah, there's a lot of great people there. But I think no matter where you're at, I think it's just important to try your best because like I've heard even people from Cal Arts where I thought like, oh man, if I go to Cal Arts, I would be so talented. But then I've heard from students or alum from Cal Arts, and they'll tell me like, "Oh, actually, like, I I just did a lot of things on my own, and like students just like shared things with each other, and like it didn't really matter that I went to Cal Arts." So yeah, I guess like no matter what school you choose, I just recommend trying your best. Try your best to be a good person. Try to work well with the people around you, and yeah,
Yeah, and that's a great like final statement that you mentioned, where like college is what you make of it. It doesn't matter what university you attend if you're doing everything that you can to kind of like set yourself apart from others, or like doing like you said, like work outside of school, then obviously like that worth ethic is going to carry you into like bigger opportunities out there.
yeah, I totally agree. Make the most of wherever you're at and whoever you're with.
Hmm. So do you have any like final statements or like any final thoughts that you have?
Oh man, my head is so empty. I have zero thoughts, but I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me on your show.
Okay, sweet. Well, with that, that would be episode 7 BYU with Joseph Buenning. And again, I'd like to thank Joseph for coming on the show, and I'd like to thank you, the listener, if you're listening. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.